Hey, deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé, the couples tell-all. Let's watch. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. As I always say, don't use YouTube as a replacement for therapy. If you need a therapist, get one. You really deserve it. Let's watch.
Mom. Oh, come here. Oh.
So it's good to see that Jamal, Kim's son, can take care of her. We like to see support. We like to see love. We like to see someone hug her as she's sad. And that's wonderful. I worry about the dynamic between children and their parents. He's a grown man, but when I see this, it's a tiny, tiny, tiny little yellow flag of an ongoing parentification that a child might go through. This does not indicate that. Mostly when I see this, I think, oh, that's great. But I also think back to other interactions that we've seen with Jamal, and given Kim's behavior, given I think what both of them have said about her previous dating relationship, I think disasters was the word, or something along those lines. Sometimes what can happen is say Jamal is 10, think of Tiffany and Ronald, for example, with the kid Daniel, I believe, that it was a seeming indication of parentification, meaning that you have a child that's being parentified over the parent. And the fallouts from that are that the child isn't allowed to be a child. The child is now concerned about things that are of an adult nature that a child does not have the ability to process. The child is made to feel like, well, if I'm there for my parent, who's there for me? There's a sense of betrayal and resentment that a lot of children have, and obviously a lot of worry. And so we heard some things from Jamal that is in that direction. I don't know. But in this moment, this isn't obviously pathological. This is, of course, what we would want to see.
It's a slap in my face. I just feel like that just hit me out of nowhere. I don't even know, what do I do now? Do I make it work now? I mean, we're in a relationship. Usman's always been honest with me and forthcoming about things. But I feel like with that, I didn't know.
Yeah, and I don't know. I kind of blame the show a little bit for this because they just, during the recording, just showed her the footage of Usman talking to Zara, which would be pretty shocking. But of course, Usman could have easily told her. I have a feeling the producers might have encouraged Usman not to tell her, but I'm pretty sure that the cast members have the ability to push back on that and say, like, no, that's, or at least back channel, be like, by the way, just, yeah. But so Usman's, I guess, mostly to blame for that. And it makes sense that she would be upset. I don't know if I showed this, but Usman was trying to be clear that he doesn't talk to Zara at all. And I think we could believe him. It's hard to know. I mean, he has a track record of lying by omission regarding the Zara issue. But anyway, so as I said last time, there's nothing wrong with Usman having residual feelings for a partner that he fell in love with. It sounds like his love for her was really significant, and Zara broke up with him. And it wasn't that long ago prior to this that the breakup happened. It's human to have residual feelings, and this notion that you're betraying your next partner by holding on to the past, when in a lot of situations you're not holding on actively. Usually people don't want to have those feelings. They want to not hurt and long for that person, but it's absolutely human to do so. So could they have a conversation about that where Usman says that and where Kim might be challenged, but at least has a greater understanding, while Usman reassures Kim that, that's in the past. I'm here for you now. Could they have a conversation like that? Yeah, and hopefully they will.
And it's like, she did all this for you, and like, I know more than anybody. My mom's been Soulja Boy this, Usman that, and it seems like he was kind of juggling between what he was gonna do, which to me tells me that he might still have some kind of connection or some feelings with Zara.
Yeah, that's a pretty good summary. of my thoughts too, that Usman might have been juggling, meaning that he was at times at least saying, I'd rather be with Zara than Kim. Again, I want to know what Usman thinks about this. It's possible that he was thinking, because we all know that he is what I would call polyamorous, what other people and maybe myself would call a polygamist, where he is going to be marrying potentially a number of individuals. So was he thinking that? Was it just a temporary thing? It's not unusual to have those experiences where, like, you are in the beginning, especially in the beginning, and I think that's important to throw in there, is that you just broke up with someone, either 6 months ago or a couple years ago, and you start dating someone new, and you have a lot of feelings for this new person, but you occasionally notice that you have feelings for your former partner. And in the beginning, say the first year of your new relationship, there's in the way that I frame it is there's a transition neurologically and attachment-wise from the former relationship to the new one. And it's a physical, neurological change. And that it takes some time. And there's a number of different phases to this that I've noticed in individuals, that when you first start dating someone else, like, people will make jokes or be terrified or harmed by when you call your new partner by your old partner's name, for example, because and I find this to be an example of clear neurological shifts, or the reality of that we will associate, if you're with someone for 5 years, you associate their name and their face and their personality and their presence with security and warmth. You might also have a lot of other associations like pain, but if you're with someone for a long time, that familiarity, it'd be like if suddenly, in some weird universe, your parents disappear and you get new parents. It would be hard to transition to those new people. You might mistakenly call them or think of them as different names, that kind of thing. It's because it's physical, right? And so there's a transition, and I've actually will use this as a barometer of testing certain elements of your neurological change, that, how often when you look at your new partner, do you think of the old person a little bit, or even their name? And one of the transitions that I've seen people go through is when they refer to their former partner by their new partner's name. So say they're 3 years into their new partner and they want to refer to their old partner, and not everyone does this, but some people do. They might actually refer to their old partner by their new partner's name, because their brain is now associating this new person in a more comprehensive way in the nervous system, attachment and closeness and romance and all that kind of stuff, with the name of the new person. Because when they think of the old person, it goes to that place in the brain of attachment and romance and togetherness and companionship. But there's a new name that is now associated with that part, and so they start referring to it anyway. So there's a transition there. And even though cognitively you're like, well, I'm with this person, I'm not with that person, it takes a while for your brain to get used to that. So with Usman, is that what's happening? And that when he reached out to Zara, did he have a temporary motivation there that he doesn't really agree with? That he's like, no, I don't. I mean, I'm guessing what he would say, if we're in this realm, he would say, well, to be honest, if Zara took me back, I would go back with her because I miss her a lot, but she doesn't want me back. So I'm moving on. And Kim is the one, or whatever. I'm guessing that's what he would say, if we believe the narrative that he's putting out there.
Usman, that was up.
I will tell you what happened, and I want you guys to listen to me. Zara and I break up, and we don't even talk.
I'm gonna be honest, Usman.
Let me land, please. If I want to go with Zara, it's easy. I can tell Kimbali, so you know what? I'm not in a relationship, I'm not interested, then I'll go with Zara.
I don't understand his attitude because he seems really dismissive and upset and hostile with Kim on something that he should not be. I think he's trying to be emphatic that he is with Kim and not with Zara, but I think he should slow down. And people do this, but he should slow down and have some empathy. I think he's focusing more on the attack and the guilt rather than tending to Kim and saying something like, yeah, we just watched that scene that happened a while back, and I don't even like what I see there. And Kim, if watching that must have been really hard, I'm really sorry. Here's my mindset at the time. I had a temporary moment where I did miss her, but it was fleeting and I don't want to be with her. I want to be with you. I think that would help, but this sort of hostile defensiveness is not going to help.
You believe me, fine. You don't believe me, fine.
So, Usman, okay, the words came out of your mouth. Flirting came naturally.
Sean, me to cheat with somebody, it's easy.
Here we go.
I make my own living. If I want to any lady, I can go and have sex anywhere I want to.
Okay, Usman, maybe that's true. What does that have to do with the fact that y'all just watched you wanting to get back with your previous partner while in a relationship with Kim? I'm guessing there's an explanation there. Yeah, I think he's done this before, and I don't know. So there's a couple factors that it could be present. One is that he isn't physically with Kim. Imagine trying to communicate to your partner through a Zoom screen while there's all these other people around and producers. Maybe that's messing up his ability to gauge what's happening for Kim. The other possibility that doesn't seem likely but could happen is he isn't really interested or isn't very interested in a relationship with Kim and will purposely sabotage things. I know people think this, and it's possible for sure, but I don't want to think this about people, but who knows? That Usman only went on the show, particularly this time, to further his career musically, and either doesn't have any interest in Kim or has a very mild interest in Kim. And that's when things get bad, if this is true, which I don't think it is, but it could be, he will sort of sabotage the situation such that a breakup happens, which is not a problem for him, given that he's received his exposure to the world on the show, and that's mainly what he's looking for. I think that's an easy accusation to make, and like I said, it absolutely could be true, but it also could be true that he legitimately is into Kim, and I can absolutely see that. There's a lot of indication of that. Anyway.
I don't have to bring Kimberly and make her look stupid. I can sleep with a woman if I want to, but I don't do that.
Wow.
That's comforting.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I wonder if this is a cultural thing as well. People from Nigeria will email me or comment below talking about the gender dynamics in Usman's culture. It's hard for me to know. I'm sure it's nuanced. I'm sure there's a lot of variance and, of course, individual differences in the culture. But I wonder if for him, he is coming at it like with a sense of entitlement and a sense of like, well, I didn't cheat on you, so what's the problem? Meaning, I'm entitled to flirt with my former partner. I'm entitled to have the feeling. I'm not used to really considering, given the way that I've seen men treat women in my culture, your feelings about that. I should have the free. Like, a more common example would be that I'll hear is, I don't know about Nigeria, but cultures where there's a high degree of sexism and unfairness to women and dehumanizing or discounting women, their men will sometimes, if not always, but if they prefer, they'll stay out all night with their friends drinking, and they won't help with parenting. They might not even pay the bills on time. They're just concerned with their friends and gambling or football or whatever, and they stay out all night, and there's this attitude of like, well, woman, stay home, take care of the kids, feed me, that's your job, shut up, that kind of attitude. Again, I don't, by no means is that every man in Nigeria or cultures like this, for sure, but I've seen it, and of course it can happen in the United States. So I don't know if that's what's happening right now, just like, shut up, like, I'm entitled to do what I want to. I didn't cheat on you, so, you know, why are we talking about this?
Yeah, that's true, but that's true. That's the reality, because you are not here, Kimberly. You can do the same if you want to in America. I don't know. If you want to break up with me right now, fine.
Right, so that lends itself to the hypothesis that he isn't interested in being with Kim now that the show is over, and he is either just, his heart is now somewhere else, or he, in a Machiavellian sense, is like, okay, now's my chance. I'm going to come out looking like I'm a good person. I'm going to try to look like a good person while also not giving her any kind of thing to hold on to. So there's a possibility of that.
I can sleep with a woman if I want to, but I don't do that.
Wow.
That's comforting.
That's awesome.
That's true, but that's true. That's the reality, because you are not here, Kimberly. You can do the same if you want to in America. I don't know. If you want to break up with me right now.
I also wonder if an element of this is his previous experiences, maybe with Kim, but also with other women that he dates from overseas, where he gets accused of cheating when he really isn't. And that in this moment, he's kind of slotting into that mindset of like, I'm being accused again of cheating, when that's not really what's happening. Kim is watching you on this television clip of you saying you want to be with another woman after you engage in a relationship with Kim. So it's not a cheating concern, it's, do you actually love me, and do you want to be with someone else concern, where I think he's like seeing it as a cheating concern, and he's like, no, I'm not cheating. It's like, yeah, okay, that's not the problem. The problem is that you just confessed your love for another woman.
Like, Usman, you should have been the one to make sure that Kimberly knew about it.
Yeah, but like Kimberly knows me.
But I didn't know about this phone call. I didn't know about that.
I totally forget.
That's not something that you should forget.
Yeah, that doesn't seem likely. Or, fine, you forgot. In this moment, you could be like, Kim, I'm so sorry that I didn't tell you. I'm so sorry that you had to watch that. Let me explain where I was coming from. Okay, you forgot. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't have empathy and care for your partner.
And I can get any woman I want, and I wouldn't do, it's like, all right, like, if you know that you're not in the wrong, then just be like, you know, I'm not in the wrong. Like, that's what it is. But you're over here defending everything, which makes me think like, all right, something got me.
I get so pissed and mad when somebody tries to tell me I do something that I didn't.
Yeah, Jamal has a good point that dost thou protest too much? Is that the Shakespearean say? Is that just Shakespeare? Anyway. But I don't know if that's what's happening. It's really hard to know. I think all speculations are possible roads to go down when it comes to Usman. It's a hard thing to read, and the future will tell, I think. Like I've been saying in the past, if they're still together in 5 years, then we can look back at this moment and say like, oh, well, his heart was as he says it is, that he's into Kim. If, like with Lisa, they break up after the tell-all, then we don't know for sure, but it's a tick in the column of at least he wasn't into her as much as he was claiming. But so Usman's saying, no, I just hate being accused of something, and it's possible that he has a history, maybe even with Kim, of being accused of things that he has never done, and he's seeing it that way rather than, and we all do this, right? Like, to bring it to our own lives, say, and I'm guessing a good number of you out there actually have this. I don't know if I've ever talked about this before. It's kind of a mundane experience, but I think very common and can be very destructive. Like, say, and you might be able to relate to this from either side. So say you notice that your partner takes the garbage out wrong. I don't know why that comes to mind, but like say they, or maybe they put the wrong thing in their recycling. Let's just use that. This is kind of from my life. My wife is much better about recycling the right things and making sure that things don't go in the landfill that shouldn't go there. I try to be good about it, but I don't know. I'm kind of lazy and impatient when it comes to that kind of thing. So I've learned to be better, and I should be better. In fact, we even recycle batteries and like their plastics. Let me just give a little plug. I don't know if you have this in your area, but we do. It's called Ridwell. They're not sponsoring, and I don't know their practices, but it's because in Seattle we have a recycling bin where you throw cardboard and glass and most plastics, but there's a lot of things you can't recycle, and there's a lot of things you shouldn't throw in the garbage, like batteries and this kind of stuff. And Ridwell actually will pick up every 2 weeks those things, but you put them in individual bags. Styrofoam is another thing. And again, I don't know the practice, but anyway, Stacy, my wife, did all that kind of stuff and I should have done that, or at least got that ball rolling, but she did all that stuff. Anyway, point is that let's say that she sees the wrong thing in the recycling or the wrong thing in the garbage or something. And she comes to me and says in a nice way, hey, you put the batteries in the garbage, you're not supposed to do that. Or maybe even she's a little pissed because it's a bad thing for the environment, and she might have already told me to do it. And she's just like, hey, batteries, garbage, don't do that. And I react poorly, like relating this to Usman, where I'm just like, I don't see it for what it is. What it is she has, 2 or 3 times told me to do something, and she cares about the environment. And it might even kind of give her a really bad visceral feeling to see a battery in the garbage. And it also hurts her feelings, perhaps, because it's an example, an indication that I don't regard her, or I'm not listening to her, or that she doesn't have influence over me or something. And so, there's a little bit of energy there. And so she tells me, don't put the battery in the garbage. And I'm guessing a lot of you couples out there can relate to little things like this. And instead of just seeing it for what it is and just saying, oh, you're right. Let's say even if I don't agree, which I would agree with that, but let's say even if it feels like, well, that's kind of your preference and not really mine. Even if that's true, I think it's important and an indication of maturity and attachment security and healing from our past relational traumas to, in the moment, even though it's kind of a sting, to just say, you're right, okay, I'll do that. Or at least to eventually, maybe you say, oh, I didn't notice that, or, oh, I forgot, but you're right. It's a sign. When I see people do this, I'm like, wow, that's very mature. The ability to incur a criticism and then immediately say, you're right, I'm sorry, I'll do that again. And I really try to do that. If I don't say it right away, maybe 5 minutes later, like we'll just be talking about something else, me and my wife, and I'll make a note. I'll be like, so that thing 5 minutes ago, you're right, and I'm sorry. Like I feel like it's really important to recognize that in yourself and communicate to the other person, because of course it is. When someone asks you to do something, there needs to be a loop, right? Especially in relationship, in terms of feedback. As a program director at the university, we're always interested in satisfying our customers, which is the students. And so there has to be a way of giving feedback, and we have to address it back. You don't just receive the feedback and disregard it or make plans. You should tell the students, this is what we're doing about what you're saying. We're either addressing it or not, or da-da-da. And obviously in a romantic relationship, that's happening all the time. And it needs to be a very fluid feedback system from both people. In this moment, Usman is receiving feedback, and he's immediately getting defensive and not really understanding what he's being criticized about. And he's just going off about things. So it's important to slow down and to be able to say that, to be able to and the thing that I try to embody myself is we so rarely get feedback. So often people are afraid to give us feedback. You know, I'm guessing there are times when my wife sees something that she doesn't like, and she's just like, I don't want to get in a fight about it. I just won't say anything. And so by the time they say something to you, it's usually the 10th moment that it happened. And so you obviously love your partner and don't want them to have ill will. It doesn't mean you have to do it, but to appreciate it and to create a safe place for that. It's really kind of the tip of the pyramid of maturity and differentiation, that ability for a couple to, within reason, because another skill is if you do have a complaint about a partner, that you kind of pick your battles. Because I've worked with couples where they really valued feedback, but they frequently would complain, which I think there's a tolerance level of pointing that stuff out. You know, we should be able to receive feedback, but if we're getting criticism all day long, it can be a lot. So now you could lace the criticism with a lot of love, but that's, again, kind of hard to do as well. So I think choosing battles is a part of the equation, but the tip of which sounds weird to say, that like only very few couples can achieve the ability to give each other feedback or make requests to each other, but I find that to be really true. It's really hard to receive criticism from our partners because sometimes people have harder time receiving feedback from their partners than they do to other people. I think it's because my model involves attachment, and this kind of thing is that we're very attached to our partners, and if there's any indication that that person is displeased with us, it concerns us a great deal. If a random person criticizes us, we're like, well, I don't care if they hate me or not, or I care less if they hate me or not, because I don't depend on them to define me as a human being. I depend on my partner to define me partially as a human being. If they are criticizing me and I don't have differentiation around that, I can't really see it for what it is, and I overreact, then it will make me feel like I'm going to be alone. That's usually what happens. I'm being criticized. I'm going to be alone. I need to attack it. And so it's strange that I'm saying this now, but I think I believe it, that for couples to have easy feedback systems, it's really advanced, and kind of sad to say that, but I think that it's true. So anyway, I think Usman is falling into that common trap that I think we all do, which is to initially come out strong and defensive against and not really listen, and to consider it a threat. There's this other possibility that he's just using this as an excuse to get out of the relationship.
I feel so like that is so unfair.
How do you think I feel not knowing about it and sitting here watching it? So
I
now
know you feel bad,
take yourself out of it and think of me, and I'm sitting here watching this. I knew nothing about it.
Yeah, good. Kim is being great. Her reaction is totally appropriate, crying, upset. She's not getting hostile. And in this moment, she's trying to help him have empathy, which is a really differentiated thing to do. It would be tempting for her to yell and scream at him, but she's trying to seek a solution to this, which is, well, if he understands and takes the time to understand what I was going through, that will provoke a different response from him. Let's see how he does.
What I want you to understand here is that I didn't have sex with anybody. It was a phone call.
كل شيء أنا عثمان نحترمك ياسر الفيديو حسيته كل شيء حقيقي.
So Usman is still digging in, and if this is the situation where this was some big plan of his and he was never into Kim that much, I could absolutely see someone in his position saying, okay, I'll play ball throughout the season because I'm trying to get on the show, but then when push comes to shove, I'm going to provoke her with an indication of that will provoke jealousy from the person, because I know how that works. And then I'm going to become incensed with the accusation, and that will break us up, because that will make me look like I'm the victim of someone's paranoia, and it will give me a way out of the relationship. And like I said, I don't like to believe that that's true, but let's talk about all hypotheses.
That who feel that there was a connection between you and Zara.
I'm fine. You guys can see the connection. I don't worry about that. I worry about what Kimberly feels, and that is my concern.
Right. And Kimberly said she felt there was some type of connection.
Well, I wouldn't focus on the connection. As I've been saying, the fact that he still has feelings for someone means that he's a human being. I think a more accurate way of phrasing it would be, I think what we see here is that you were betraying your relationship with Kim and you left it all out. It would have been perhaps okay if you had that conversation and either prior or after told Kim, look, I had this conversation, I still have these feelings. So I have an issue with them framing it as we see a connection. Now, I guess what they're saying is you're lying that you don't want to be with this other person. I guess that's what they're saying. Anyway, but he can easily deny that, is the thing. He can easily say there is no connection. Whereas if you talk about how, and this is another tip that we can use in our relationships, is if you stick to your own feelings and not like, I feel like you're an a-hole. That's not a feeling, that's a conclusion. If you stick to your own feelings, like if you're Kim and you say, when I was watching that, it hurt me because it made me feel like I don't matter. It made me feel like you're still in love with someone else and that I'll never have the whole you. It made me feel threatened that what if Zara wants you back, that you might leave me. It makes me feel afraid. It makes me feel hurt. And if you say that, that's not debatable. The Usmans of the world might try, but they can't effectively debate the fact that you felt a certain way, especially if you stick to those primary feelings. But talking about him having a connection, that's a conclusion. The feeling for Kim is hurt and worry, which is almost always the primary feelings that we're having in these kinds of situations. But the conclusion is you have a connection. He can easily debate the connection. He can easily say there is no connection. And there actually might not be a connection. There probably isn't a connection because that relationship ended a long time ago. So sticking in that, and people almost always do this in relationships. They almost always will stick to these conclusions and debate the conclusions rather than sticking with the primary feelings and inviting the other person's compassion and empathy for that. I don't know if Usman would have compassion and empathy for those primary feelings, but that's the direction I would go down.
I did. I saw something, but Usman and I, we'll talk about that later.
Okay, so Kim, I think wisely, is calculating that 1, it's hard to communicate in this weird format. 2, it's kind of embarrassing. Let's move on. 3, if we're going to work on this, we're going to have a lot of conversations, not just one on the show. And she's like, we'll talk about it later. So, it's good. All right. Well, if you haven't become a patron of the podcast yet, you can do so now by clicking the link below or going to patreon.com. It's the one thing that we appreciate most, mostly because I wouldn't be able to do any of this stuff if it weren't for the patrons. And so if you already are a patron, thank you so much. I would not be able to do this episode or 99% of all the content that I do if it weren't for the patrons. Essentially what happens is when people become a patron, it means I can reduce my other work, which, being a professor and a therapist, such that I can make content for the YouTube channel and the podcast. So you're literally paying my bills when you become a patron of the podcast. So if you, and there's always people that are they're canceling essentially, or their credit card isn't going through. That's another thing. If you, you might want to look in your email box, because every month there's a good percentage of people who are canceled because their credit card gets changed or something like, I don't know. Anyway, so we need a continual flow of people signing up every month to kind of keep this thing moving down the road. So if you want to do that, that would be great. But if not, it's totally cool as well. I will point out that just watching this video, if if the ads that are in the video actually also keeps this rolling down the road. So just watching this video helps us as well, for sure. So you're contributing, whether you like it or not. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.